one of the things that I've heard so many people say, I just don't know what to do. And I feel like sometimes I get into this conversation and am I making it worse? How do I start? All of these different types of things. So I sat down with a couple of different people one day and I thought about what are our high points in this? What are our key takeaways? Because whether you're in a one-on-one role, you are an admin management role, or even just having conversations with spouses, loved ones, friends, whatever. If there's a challenging conversation at play, there's some really simple things that we can do just to make it better. Because let's face it, we all don't want them to really become ugly. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. See here, now we go, make sure we got there we go. So usually I have my copyright protection in here because a lot of times I provide the PowerPoint. If you are interested in a copy of the PowerPoint, if you would just email me at the end, I am more than happy to send this to you. But just understand that they are protected. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be discussing today. So listening is one of the most powerful skills that you can bring to a difficult conversation. And we'll talk about it here in a few minutes when people say, I've got the number one thing in my head when I'm having a challenging conversation. They're not listening. And it's so frustrating for people. So we're going to talk a little bit about what actually is a challenging conversation, what defines that conversation as difficult or challenging, because I think we might all have a little bit of a different perspective. How does our communication style come into play, and how does that affect our ability to communicate? I mean, when you start thinking about how are you as a communicator, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then we'll talk finally a little bit. I've got some tips about how to kind of get yourself ready. And I think that's one of the things that people don't think about. And I always remind people, did you prepare for your conversation? You have to prepare for this. It helps. So we're going to talk about that as well. So what is a challenging conversation? James, what is a challenging conversation to you?
Something that I let emotion run, like just to be really broad about it, something that like instead of just being able to talk logically, it just you put too much thought into the emotion side of it. I don't know, like where I feel like I'm concerned about how they're going to react after I tell them or during how the conversation is going to end up.
Okay. Lais, what about you? What do you think?
I think a challenging conversation for me is when you have two people trying to achieve two different things and you have to just discuss how to solve that. So it could be something with my husband or my boss, or just when two people have two different opinions and they want to make a decision, for example. So
okay, awesome. It is definitely challenging. And you think about, what am I offering? And why am I going into a conversation sometimes feeling not prepared, feeling overwhelmed? That's a challenging conversation. And I think it varies a lot from person to person as far as who we're communicating with. So often it's the variety of the topics. It's delivering or asking for feedback. Some people just can't do that. Sometimes it's difficult to apologize or anything else that is challenging for you. So I have the communication style that there's not a whole lot I won't ask for because I feel comfortable for that. But yet I've had a lot of conversations with people, like men have concerns asking certain things of women. Women have concerns asking certain things of men. How do the management levels go? Like, can you go to your manager and say, hey, so can we talk about this situation? How the meeting went versus how you treated me at the meeting that we had, little things like that. So it's one of the things that's a big part of this little mini lunch and learn today is preparing yourself and looking at what am I bringing to the picture, because what can you control? Only yourself. So a little bit of preparation goes a long way. So anxiety is a big thing. For many people, it just is overwhelming. What do any of you cater to the ideology, I'll just ignore it and it'll go away? And what happens when you ignore it, hoping it'll go away? I mean, sometimes it festers, sometimes it makes it
I'll be right back.
worse.
I got a person who's got into a car accident.
I'm sorry?
Client that just got into a car accident. I'll be back.
Oh, goodness. So do you worry that by having a conversation that you're going to disappoint that person? Do you not want to upset that person? These are a lot of things that really start rolling around in people's heads. So when you start leading into the conversation, you're already falling apart. You may not look like it, but you are already falling apart internally. So that then segues over to how do we balance our emotion? So one of the things that I find interesting is that we literally have 17 million combinations of emotions. But yet we really only use 25 to 30. So our basic ones are we happy, sad, fearful, mad, and we have admiration, we have guilt, we have surprise, what have you. So when you're going into a challenging conversation, what emotions are you bringing in to that conversation? And a lot of times that leads a lot as well. So why does this kind of stuff matter? So when we think about emotion, they do have a pretty significant effect on how we think, how we feel, and how we react. Sometimes they come and go. Sometimes they arrive with no warning. And then having an understanding about your own emotional state not only helps you understand someone else, but you can also give insight to yourself. And this will make a little bit more sense in a few minutes when we talk about getting prepared to have a conversation with someone that could be potentially challenging. What types of conversations, to either of you ladies, what types of conversations do you know are already going to be stressful from your perspective? Like what conversations do you go, oh my gosh, go ahead, Robin.
I had this morning, but it's when in business, let's say someone either didn't read something that was sent to them, or there's some kind of expectation that I feel that I have put out clearly.
Okay.
And either there's a misunderstanding, or I'm going to have to tell them no, or disappoint them based on either miscommunication or whatever that is. But knowing going into it that I'm going to be telling them something they don't want to hear, and rewriting the email over and over to make sure it's like nice, but still keeping my boundaries and being clear without saying, I already told you that, but going into it for me just feels yucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Lance, what about you? Do you have any that kind of jump into you?
I'm just thinking, I think any conversation that involves like money discussions, I think for me is always stressful, either at home or at work, because people have different mindsets about money. And it's just, this comes when you're negotiating about a goal you want to achieve, or a perspective, like a strategy you want to take. So that comes into place. And again, to the money point, I guess, when we have to call clients that haven't paid, I think that's kind of a little stressful.
Yeah. Like, hey, how are you? By the way, could you pay us? Right? It's like,
and I feel
we talk that conversation too much, right? I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yes. And I feel like the person didn't pay and put you in, like they are doing something that they're not supposed to do, right? They are doing something wrong, but then you're like the bad guy that is calling, and you're the bad person that is asking for them to pay. And it's just, I feel like you're the one doing the wrong thing, right? Why am I the bad person? But it's just difficult to approach in a good way.
Right. Yeah. And that's always a challenge because, are you now pulling that person in and they're going, oh my gosh, I didn't pay it and I can't pay it. And now she's calling me. So now you're in they're in a bit of like a defense mode. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, but we don't provide service for free. Can we talk about how we can figure this out or make payments or do whatever? I mean, and here was our expectation when we first started. So, it's hard to kind of feel like you haven't been taken advantage of if you're a very giving person and you try to always give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes it kind of comes around and gets you from the backside because we are too giving. And I'm one of those people. And I have learned it's hard to not be that way because it's my natural demeanor. But I've also learned that I give too much. So I got to kind of rein it back a little bit because then it doesn't evolve into a challenging conversation. Like, I gave you that under the thought process of, like you were saying, Robin, did I not explain this from the very beginning? So sometimes it can be challenging. So emotions do actually help because it helps us understand and emphasize with others. I mean, if I have a conversation with you and I see that you're really upset and I'm being angry and like maybe hard on it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, now I feel bad because I've come across like this. It does kind of give us a little bit of a barometer sometimes. Emotions help us both thrive and survive because there's, it kind of connects us to that outside world. And it also helps balance the intensity in our life. If we are living an intense life, the emotions we can process, try to pull it back down, get through the emotion of the moment, and then figure out where do we go from there. What I think is really interesting is this quote, which says, they're great and they have purpose, but certainly not the guide to your life, by Josh Hatcher. So what does that mean? It means that for me, the emotions are there and we're going to have them whether we want them or not, but we need to kind of learn how to manage them. And how does that emotion or those emotions play into what we're dealing with right now? Like my emotions are on my shoulders immediately. You can tell when I walk into a room exactly what my emotional level is. And that's how my body communicates. So I've learned to kind of temper it a little bit and make it so that doesn't set people up immediately to go, oh, you're this way, when I may or may not, because it's going to depend on how they read it. So sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. One of the more common complaints, and I think this is so interesting, and I'm sure all of us can understand it, the perception that the other person isn't listening. I mean, everybody's nodding. So like we're having a conversation with someone and they're like looking their heads away, or they're just kind of like this, or you can just tell that they're not listening. So what type of emotion does that then cause you to have when you're looking at this individual and you're like, they are so not listening to me right now? Where am I going with this? Right? You get frustrated, maybe angry, maybe like you are so not even worth my time at this point. And it's hard to be able to kind of step back and say, maybe this just isn't a good time. Maybe we should have conversation about this later, because I'm feeling like maybe you're involved in some other things and I really need to have your undivided attention to have this conversation. So if there's a better time for you, then let's sit down and talk about that. What's interesting is most people on average are afraid to do that. They are they feel like they can't say, let's just set this aside. It's okay to say, not right now. Respectfully, but not right now. So now is not a good time. And we can talk in a few minutes a little bit more about that. So when we talk about communication style basics, and these are based on DISC, but I think that you'll get a pretty good perspective. Communication styles through DISC, they actually put them into 4 categories. So you have a very dominant style, an influential style, a steady style, and a conscientious style. And you can see all around the circle, there's a lot of sub traits that are involved in those. So like if you're a D, you like a challenge, you're very results oriented, you are going to move and have action toward what you want. An I, they are enthusiastic, they like to collaborate, they too like to move forward. An S, and you can see they share some too. So an S likes collaboration, they like to be supportive of a group, they like stability. And then of course your C's are the accuracy people. They're like your accountant and your scientist. They want the stability, but their communication is based all on the numbers, the figures, the actual facts. I don't want to hear like an I will tell you how I feel, and a C is going to go, I don't want the feel, don't care about the feel. I need the stats. Like, what's the number? What's the dirt? That's what I need. So when we look into these a little bit, you know, like your D is going to be assertive. Your I is going to be all about the feelings. When you talk about your C's, they want to try to suppress the craziness, but just try to get, let's just figure out how to move forward. And then of course, again, I'm sorry, your S, and then your C is logic. So these aren't personality traits, these are communication styles. And one of the things that's interesting about this is that everybody uses all of the different types of communication styles at some given point in time, but you will generally speaking fall into one of those categories more so than anything else. So has anybody done a DISC profile before? Like a long time ago, Robin? It's been around a long time, and it's really, really intuitive if you're trying to figure out kind of like what's my best way to communicate. So we'll first talk about the Ds. They are on demand. They are very dominant. Think about, and this is with respect to having conversation, their goal is victory. So they want to get to the end. So their conversation is going to be straightforward. This is the problem. This is what we need to do. This is what I want you to do. And I want this to get done. Questions. I mean, that's just kind of how they communicate. So they're aggressive. They're autocratic. They have a very authoritative means about them. They want to win-lose. You either do this or you do that. Very straightforward. They're not very flexible because they have in their mind the A and the Z. They don't care about the stuff in the middle. They want, or at A, I need you at Z here. And then of course, overpowers with force, that's the perception, because they want to So then we have our I's. They are expressive, they are influential. Their goal is acknowledgement. So I feel bad because we didn't get this done. How do you feel? Like, that's kind of how they come across. I want to explain my feelings about why I feel we need to have this conversation. I don't want to necessarily worry about the tension, but what can we do to make it better? They talk a lot about their feelings. A lot, and they don't like personal attacks. So if we're going to have a conversation with someone, don't come at me with, well, you were supposed to do this, because I'm going to feel sad. That's my communication style. Okay. Your S's are looking for steadiness. They are looking to comply. They want to have a harmonious environment all the time. So when you think about an S, they're the ones that are going to kind of step forward when there's a little bit of rumbling taking place, because they don't want the C's to get big and bad. They see a little bit of rumble. They want to go, okay, so can we talk about this? They want to make sure that the relationships stay intact, and that they stay in a good place. They are going to be very accommodating. They're going to almost self-sacrifice themselves because their goal is to have a harmonious relationship taking place, and they don't want you to be mad at them. But the downside to that is because they are so accommodating, they're going to be simmering. So the S is the one that could potentially go, because they've simmered a long time, and all of a sudden you could potentially see this stronger communication come out where they're like, I have been putting up with this stuff forever, and I don't want to put it up with it anymore. So we need to figure out how to get it done. You know, I appreciate you guys, and I know what I have to do. So, you know, whatever, we need to figure out the problem. So, and then finally our C's, they are going to be very quiet. They're going to be the person that's going to sit at the back of the room. They're going to observe. They're going to be defensive because when everybody's talking about emotion, they don't want to talk about emotion. They don't talk about emotion. And they could potentially be defensive because they're going to go, okay, put the emotions away. If your issue is this, give me the facts, I'll fix it. I don't care how everybody feels. We need to get this done. So let's get it done. And then they don't like the passive aggressiveness. So if you have a team with a very strong D, and then you've got an I kind of going, oh, but everybody needs to get along, and then the S is coming in, your C's get frustrated. They are, as I mentioned, only going to be striving and thriving on logic and fact. So as we're going through these, can you guys kind of see your networks of your groups of people that you are interacting with? Can you kind of look at, oh, they might be a this and they might be a that? Anybody, does those jump out at all?
Robin, what do you think I am?
Oh, Robin, he's thrown what out there.
I was pretty much picturing my spouse and my children in these different things.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Seeing where we all fit and why there's different situations. But James, yeah. I feel like you're an I or an S.
I'm an I for sure.
You're an I?
Oh yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and Christopher's a C.
Does that work well?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
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 So James, what do you think I am then?
I don't know, man. You're definitely not an S.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't know.
Can you be a mix?
I feel like you're DNC.
You can be a mix. So when I first started doing this a million years ago, when I worked in law enforcement, I was a D because that's what's required. Mm-hmm. So my communication style was a very strong D, and I had like a little side order of I, because that's just who I am. I'm like the Labrador puppy in the room. And then as I've evolved over the years, I'm no longer in that role. And with what I'm doing now, I'm a very strong I, and I actually have kind of like a side of S to me now. Because my D, I just kind of like, whatever, you know, I don't have to push people in that direction so much anymore. And this is my professional role. Now, my personal role with my life, I am still a very strong D, because that's the life that I lead personally. So I have to have a stronger communication style with what I do. So, and it's not uncommon, you know, when I ask people, you know, are you the same person at home as you are at work? And everybody's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, okay, think about it. It's different people. Like Robin talking about your spouse and kids, you know, it's like, you know, it's a little bit different. So it's fun to think about. If you want to, if you're interested in a disc profile, let me know. We can chat about it afterwards. But oops, switch the page. So here's one thing I had, and I learned very quickly. One of my first jobs working for a physicians group, our lead physician, the medical director, was a D. And he literally, when you went in to meet with him, he had an egg timer, you know, a little standard egg timer. He'd sit it down and he'll go. I can't even get my name out in a 2-minute timer, much less, but that was his style. Now, some people would look at that and go, gosh, he's kind of a jerk. But then the other side looks at it is, okay, so his time is short. He's giving you 2 minutes. You have to learn how to make it short, sweet, and to the point. Well, as an there's nothing short, sweet, and to the point about me. There's 9,000 stories that lead to a point. So you learn as you intermingle with more and more people, how you kind of have to, one, temper your own communication style and kind of make a quick assessment of what you feel like that individual is. And now what's the best way to communicate with them to be effective? One of the last people I worked with was a D, and she was a hard D. And I learned really quickly, I'm like, you know what? Short, sweet, and to the point. I just learned because it was the only way we could be effective. Because if I didn't do that, all we ended up doing was arguing because she didn't care about this. She only cared about this. But I feel like I need to tell you about this to get to that. She won't hear it. So I learned. I have this is what we're doing, and that's where we'll be. Okay, bye. High five. Out. So you learn over time. So when you're thinking about a D, giving perspective, they have a very high level of expectation. They will speak up. They will you have to show confidence. If you are trying to figure out the best way to interact with the D, a lot of listening, listen to their points. What's their top 3? They have this and they want to get there. And here's how we need to get there. Absolutely. Reiterate to them their goals. And now you have to fill in the blanks. Sometimes they want to make decisions. Sometimes they don't. Some Ds will go, look, just get there. I don't care. But understand that they're going to be a little bit more, and I hate saying aggressive, but they're going to be very assertive in what they want and what they need. And for some of that's a little bit challenging. For an I.
Can I ask a question about that
absolutely.
one?
Do you want to go back to the Ds?
Sure, yes, if you
Okay.
could. So my question is, this is the intention is to learn a way to better communicate with them. But what if they become aggressive? So do you, how do you communicate then? You know, when you think it's not okay for them to kind of cross the line?
I think first and foremost, taking a sit. One of the things that I've learned is just kind of taking a sit back a little bit, let them finish, and then say to them, I'm concerned, or I don't appreciate the way that you're coming across. I'm feeling intimidated. I'm feeling whatever your emotion is that pops up. So if this is not a good time to have this conversation, can we recess and talk about it at another point? If this is not a good time, I absolutely understand and I respect that. Nobody should be having a conversation with someone where they are feeling intimidated or feeling fearful or anything like that. And some people, that's just how they communicate. So I've learned that by expressing to them, you know, I feel like you are coming across really strong and it's bothering me. I don't like that. Can we kind of tone it down a little bit? And it's going to depend on who the individual is. I am uncomfortable. And a lot of times they don't even realize that's how they communicate and how they come across.
Mm-hmm.
So having that open kind of dialogue helps a lot. Does that help?
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm just like trying to remember situations, but sometimes I feel like when I'm in the middle of situations like that, I become very quiet and I don't have like much courage just to step up and say, this is making me uncomfortable, you know? So I was just trying to understand a way that I could do it. So yeah, thank you.
It's hard. It's hard to be able to say, I'm not comfortable with this. And it's just something that you have to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So when we give perspective to an I, there's approachability, be enthusiastic. An I is all about building a professional network. They are 100% people. They're outgoing, they're sociable. They are you know, I laugh because one of my counterparts was as high an I as I was. And we always laughed that we're like the herd of Labrador puppies in the room, because it's like, how are you? How's the kids? Oh my God, I saw your thing the other day. Your office looks really cute. Oh my God, look at your skirt. You know, we always want people to feel good and happy about themselves. And it doesn't mean that we don't get our job done, but we have our list of things that we need to do. We want to make sure that everybody's happy. Do you need a sweater? Are you too cold? Can I get you some more coffee? They want everybody to be in a good place. And for some people, that is irritating, especially a D. They don't have time for that stuff. So again, that's where I've learned to kind of temper myself, because like it says there, my enthusiasm can wear others out. They're like, oh God, here she comes. Because I'm just like, let's have fun. You know, it's hard for some people. When we talk about your C's, you want to be diplomatic. You want to maintain some composure, showing modesty in that, oh gosh, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. They're going to be a little bit cautious, and they do like to work behind the scenes, but they also are going to want to make sure that everything is in its place and that they have the ability to move forward. They're going to be not as quiet as a C and not as outgoing as an I, but they're kind of like a little pull together of the two of those. They're going to be the ones taking the notes and trying to figure out everybody in their place. Finally, we have our I did our C's, did that backwards, and then our steadies. They're going to be the enthusiastic one. You know, and this is interesting. My heart is the barometer of the room. I can tell when someone's feelings are hurt. I'll be there to listen and provide support. That's what a steadiness person does, how they communicate. They're going to walk into a room and go, why is that person over there kind of standing by themselves? Why is that person not engaged? Is it too cold? You know, whatever. So they're going to be paying attention to that kind of stuff. So one of the things to keep in mind is, now how do I take this and put this in for a challenging conversation? How do you prepare? First and foremost, why are we doing this? What is the purpose or the reason for the conversation? Are you doing it just because you're mad? Are you doing it because we just need to figure out, we're at a stalemate, we need to figure out how to go forward? Some of the things that are really beneficial is, as we're having this conversation with people, I want to learn what happened from your perspective. So this is what I'm under the impression has taken place. Tell me what you think. give me your thoughts, give me your views, and then you can express yourself, and then you can bring those two perspectives together and figure out how are we going to problem solve. Because a lot of people, when they're frustrated, all they want to do is blah, 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 blah. They want to explain why they are not happy. And that's where the problem comes in, that if someone's getting blah, 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 that they're like, oh, here it goes. You know, they're not listening. So we need to learn to listen, as well as we need to learn how to speak the problem as well, so that we can ultimately be effective. When we talk about emotion and self-identity, are you angry about something else? Was this just like the straw that broke the camel's back? Is there a lot of other things going on and you're just like, I've had enough? Are you a laundry lister? Do you know what that term means? So you have somebody comes to you and says, well, this wasn't done. Okay. Oh, and this wasn't done, and this wasn't done, and this wasn't done. You're like, I didn't even know about all of these things. So one issue becomes a whole list of things. Is your emotion and reaction part of your self-identity? And that kind of comes along the ways of, oh, great, you have to go tell her that's a problem. She's going to blow. So here's the classic statement: reframe your emotion into a constructive conversation. This is how I feel. Don't turn the feelings into judgments. So if someone says to you, well, I feel bad. Oh, you feel bad? What? Like you didn't care? No, I feel bad that it went that direction. It did not have anything to do with the fact that I didn't care. So you can see some people kind of turn and twist that way. So you have to be prepared to kind of stop and say, okay, can I clarify? Ask a question. I don't care are strong words for a lot of people. Don't care. I don't care. Like in my house, we don't use I don't care. We use I don't have a preference, because I don't care can come across negatively. We have to avoid the hit and run. So what you want to do is make sure that you have the understanding of, why are we talking about this? Let's sit down and have conversation about it. Hit and run is where you kind of like throw all of your feelings and all of the impacts on someone, and they're just sitting there going, wow, like you just got all of this stuff going there. The problem with the hit and run is that people are going to many times immediately be defensive, or they're going to react in a very fearful way, and it becomes very impulsive. And that's the opportunity where things get said that are misconstrued, or the wrong words get used, because people are fearful, they're scared, now they're mad. And all of a sudden you're being so defensive that you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Why are you yelling at me about all of this stuff? So what we suggest is that as you make a statement about what you're talking about, make a statement and then give them, the other person, the ability to absorb it and think about it. And then you can go on to the next one. What you want to have is one-on-one conversations about all of the different points relating to your conversation. If you have a challenging conversation and you have 2 minutes to talk about it, one of the best things you can do is say, you know, Robin, we really need to talk about this problem we have. I know you're pressed for time. I'm pressed for time. Can we talk about this at like 2 o'clock? What that also gives you is the ability to kind of step back and go, okay, so this is a problem. I now have time to kind of process and think about from my own perspective, so that when you sit down with the other individual, you've already had like a little bit of homework done. Makes it a little bit easier. Communication styles, like we just talked about, is always great for self-awareness. Some people think before they respond, some verbally process, and some are very direct. So as we talked about communication styles, that has a lot of effect on that. What we have to do, like we talked about earlier, is find some balance and remain authentic as we're having conversation. If you know, like I know when I'm going to talk to a D, I have got to really look at this. If I'm going to go talk to a C, I'm not a detail person at all. So when I go to talk to a C, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You have all the details and I have all the fluffy stuff. So let's figure out how to make this come together. Actually, then we talk about, where do you want to go with this? So before you have the conversation, have a goal in mind. What is the intent? Keep in mind that feelings could get hurt. Try to do what you can to avoid that. We want to work toward a positive outcome. Be responsible for what you're responsible for. Don't point fingers at them for what they're responsible for. Hopefully they, in that same environment, will say, oh gosh, I did that too. Okay, great. Let's figure out how to avoid doing that in the future. Even with the best intentions, what is said can still be harmful or have bad impact. So you really have to be careful about the words that you use and the way that you say them. So let's talk about ground rules. How are we for time? Have conversations at the same eye level. Don't have a higher person and a lower person. You don't want to talk down to someone. Speak direct. Be calm. Finger pointing. Don't have a conversation with someone like this, because you're going to get my hand going like this. That's a power play, and it's not good. Be careful of the names, the words, the insults, and the threats. Be specific. When they're talking, don't interrupt. Let them speak. Be open-minded. So now we've done our homework, so we're thinking about kind of what our thought is to get toward the end. Stay on topic. If you have a laundry lister, one of the things that you can say is, okay, great. So let's go through our list. Let's talk about this first, because that's my key point. Let's talk about this, and then we can sit down and talk about the other concerns. Don't walk away until you both are on the same page. If you have to take a timeout, that's okay. You know what? Let's take a 10-minute break. We both need a little bit of air. Let's come back together and we will finish talking about it. Don't blame. Use the I statements. I felt, or I saw, or I understand that. And then the other thing too to keep in mind, don't assume you understand how the other person feels. Well, I'm sure you feel like that. No, that's not how I feel about that. So I feel this and I see this is the best way to go, so that they too can understand the direction that you're going. Okay. So make a plan. What is the issue? Hear both sides. How are we going to get out of this? What's our desired outcome? And how do we move forward? At the end, saying, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me about this. And then figure out, what do we need to do in the future so that we don't have hurt feelings, and that we can talk about things before they get really big. Okay, so recap: provide clarity, provide positive intent, learn from the other perspective, give opportunities for the other individual to express their feelings, and problem solve together, because everybody needs a win. Woo! Did it. 1 o'clock. Questions. It's challenging having different types of conversations with different people, because they kind of come with it sometimes with a preconceived idea on what they expect the solution to be, and sometimes that doesn't work. And to be able to say to someone, hey, I appreciate your perspective, but did you know this? So When I do this as a bigger class, it's a 3-hour class, and we do a lot of role playing to help people understand simple situations and be able to step back and go, wow. What's also fun is when we incorporate DISC into it, we'll do 4 tables and we'll put all the D's together and all the I's, all the S's and all the C's. All the D's do is fight. All the I's, they hardly get anything accomplished because they're being social. So, you can kind of see how that works. And then when you kind of start mixing people up, everybody has a great piece of the pie that they add. So having a team that's a mix of people is a great way to go. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but somebody's got to kind of learn if you have too many D's in a team, everybody else has got to kind of figure out how we're going to make this work a little bit better. And they learn over time, usually. Oops. Boy, speedy. So here's the DISC profile. If you're interested, let me know. Here is my email. So I am happy to send you the presentation if you are interested. I do have, if you go to sonyashearerconsulting.com, I just put up a whole bunch of classes. One is multi-generational communication, which is a really, really fun class too. How many of you have individuals who are of either the baby boomer, I'm a baby boomer, or even the silent generation that works in your office? If you have multi-generational workforce, there's a lot of different perspective that comes with that. So it's a fun class. There's a leadership class on there, a whole bunch of different things. So
nice.
With that, thank you.